Welcome back to Football Daily, where today we're running through 10 footballers broken by their experience of playing for their clubs. Whether they were run into the ground with injuries or suffered emotionally from fan abuse, these players have gone through a tough time indeed. Let's go. Ousmane Dembélé. When Ousmane Dembélé arrived at Barcelona in the summer of 2017, expectations were high. Having just turned 20, the young Frenchman was rated almost as highly as Kylian Mbappe at the time, after wowing Bundesliga audiences with his superb attacking displays under Thomas Tuchel at Borussia Dortmund, contributing to a goal every 113 minutes in the German top flight. Just a year on from signing him from Rennes, BVB made a near €100 million profit on Dembele. But Barca are yet to see any significant return on their investment, with the camp now proving a cursed home for the France international. Having had a squeaky clean injury record before arriving in Catalonia, Dembele has sat out a whopping 76 games over the last 2.5 seasons, suffering a total of 9 injuries. During this time period, he has clocked just over 900 minutes more action than he did in his single season in Dortmund, while he hasn't been able to hit the creative heights of his spell at the Westfalenstadion. And to make matters worse, just as Dembele was getting ready to return to action under the new, more attack-minded coach Kieran Tierney, he suffered a fresh setback which will keep him out of the rest of the 2019-20 campaign. Before we move on to our next player, just a quick reminder to subscribe to Football Daily and hit that notification bell so you don't miss another great video like this one. Harry Kane. Since fully breaking into the first team at Tottenham under Mauricio Pochettino in the 2014-15 season, Harry Kane has started all but 3 of the league games for which he's been fit, a period which has now spanned over 5 years and 180 appearances. Add to this Euro 2016 and the 2018 World Cup, and you have a man who has had very little time off and almost 0 time to recover from 7 separate injuries. The most glaring example of this was the 2019 Champions League final. Kane injured ligaments in his ankle in early April, but was rushed back less than 2 months later for the historic clash with Liverpool in Madrid. Somewhat unsurprisingly, the 26-year-old was almost anonymous, mustering just 1 shot in completing a grand total of 9 passes, despite his side enjoying 65% of the ball. Since then, Kane's effectiveness in front of goal has taken a significant dip. This season, his expected goals and assists per 90 is the worst of his Tottenham career at 0.5, and he is also taking less than 3 shots a game for the first time since his loan spell at Norwich in 2012-13. With yet another lengthy spell on the physio table now underway, whether the England captain will ever regain his best form is anyone's guess. Alexis Sanchez. The first of 3 Arsenal players on this list, Alexis Sanchez is perhaps the prime example of a footballer being run into the ground in the modern era. Between the start of 2013-14, his final season with Barcelona, and the end of 2017-18, after he joined Man United, the Chilean maestro was pretty much playing football constantly. First came the 2014 World Cup, where his country beat champion Spain to reach the last 16, and then 2 consecutive summers of going all the way at the Copa America, triumphing over Argentina and Lionel Messi in both finals on penalties. As a result, La Roca qualified for the 2017 Confederations Cup, where they lost in the final to then world champions Germany. Sanchez featured prominently in each tournament and made 53 international appearances in that 4-year period, well over a third of his 132 caps, all while bossing it in the Premier League too, clocking up over 30 appearances in each season. So it's no surprise that by the time he moved to Old Trafford in January 2018, Sanchez was burnt out. Showing signs of slowing down in his final months at Arsenal, the former Udinese man has scored just 6 goals in 54 club appearances since leaving the Emirates, missing 34 games through injury. Laurent Koscielny. Arsenal fans are pretty used to seeing their stars succumb to significant injuries over the years, but the case of Laurent Koscielny is particularly damning for the way it ended. After joining the Gunners in 2010, the French centre-back suffered over 30 separate injuries, but despite constant setbacks, proved himself as one of the Premier League's finest defenders during a 9-year stay at the Emirates. And the former Lorient man was also incredibly resilient. Only once in his Arsenal career did he make less than 30 appearances in a season, and the Gunners' defensive woes throughout this time meant he was pretty much always needed. His final season in London was marred by an Achilles tendon rupture, an injury which also ruled him out of France's victorious 2018 World Cup, in what would have been his final involvement for his national team. But despite this huge setback, a 32-year-old Koscielny worked diligently to get himself back to fitness and remarkably did so within 7 months. With Arsenal in the midst of another injury crisis, he was rushed back into regular involvement, playing 4 games in 13 days. But despite this commitment, relations between him and the club had turned sour by the end of the campaign, with disagreements over an alleged pay cut in his new contract, seeing the Frenchman go on strike in pre-season before securing a move to Bordeaux. John Terry. Unlike Koscielny and Arsenal, John Terry's relationship with Chelsea remains strong to this day, and it's no wonder. The former Blues defender is the most decorated captain in the club's history. But it also comes as little surprise that the centre-back ran through brick walls for the West London outfit, so much so that it's actually pretty amazing he played until he was 37. The closest call of his career came in the 2007 League Cup final, when he was knocked out after diving headfirst into Abu Dhabi's flailing boot, and it was this kind of wild commitment that made him so beloved to the Stamford Bridge faithful. It was also something that was exploited by various Chelsea managers, none more so than Jose Mourinho, who insisted he take daily injections in order to play every game of the 2014-15 Premier League campaign. The Portuguese coach was determined to have him play the duration of the season, and it worked. At 34 years old, Terry lifted his 4th Prem title, having played every minute of league football for the first and only time in his career. But it would come back to bite. He made just 33 top-flight appearances over the next 2 years, and while he left Chelsea with a 5th league winners' medal thanks to Antonio Conte, his contribution that term amounted to less than 500 minutes of action. Kieran Tierney. Thanks to @PaulMuct7 on Twitter for this suggestion. One of the most talked about transfers of the 2019 summer window, Kieran Tierney has so far played less than 300 minutes of league action for Arsenal, and while this has largely been down to an unfortunate dislocated elbow, the Scottish fullback also arrived at the Emirates out of repair. A hot prospect from a young age, Tierney made his debut for Celtic at just 17, and quickly became a fixture in the first team, clocking up 130 senior appearances by the age of 21. But during the 2018-19 campaign, a nasty hip injury dealt the Isle of Man-born defender the first major setback of his career. And even after returning following more than 2 months out, had to play through constant excruciating pain before having surgery, with the onset of a double hernia only compounding his fitness woes. A longer period on the sidelines surely would have helped in Tierney's recovery, and while this no doubt would have driven the left-back mad, would have probably ensured he arrived at Arsenal in better shape. As things stand, it could be the end of the 2019-20 season before we see the Scottish international 100% fit again. Marcus Rashford. Much like Kieran Tierney, Marcus Rashford was fast-tracked into regular first-team football at a young age. In February 2016, he was drafted into the starting lineup for Man United's Europa League knockout game against Midtjylland following an injury to Anthony Martial, and after scoring twice on a now famous debut, featured in all but one of their games for the rest of the season. In just under 3 months, an 18-year-old Rashford made 17 appearances, each one a start. In fact, since that fateful night, the English forward has made more appearances than any other outfield player at Old Trafford. Relied upon by Louis van Gaal and Jose Mourinho to add pace and unpredictability to otherwise uninspired attacking displays, Rashford became the main man under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, tasked with winning games almost single-handedly in the absence of Paul Pogba. And in January 2020, it eventually caught up with him. 16 minutes after coming on as a substitute against Wolves in the FA Cup, Rashford suffered a double stress fracture in his spine. And it was subsequently revealed the 22-year-old had been playing through a back injury in the weeks building up to the game, such was the dependence on him to lead the United front line. With the England international potentially out until the summer, the club have paid the ultimate price. One can only hope they take better care of him in the future. Oumar Niasse. Unlike the other players we have talked about so far, Oumar Niasse has an excellent injury record and hasn't been run into the ground by his club. In fact, it's quite the opposite, and that's where the problem lies. One of many attackers signed by Everton in recent years, Niasse arrived at Goodison Park in February 2016, and in the 4 years since has made just 12 starts in the Premier League for the Toffees. When Ronald Koeman arrived at the club, he was brutally demoted to the reserves, unable to train with the first team and not even given a locker in the changing room. Despite short loans at Hull and Cardiff, he has been almost completely bereft of football for the rest of his time in England, with Sam Allardyce the only manager to give him a proper run in the Everton team back in 2017-18 when he clocked up a decent 10 goal contributions. Unwanted from pretty much the moment he joined, the former Lokomotiv Moscow man's mistreatment on Merseyside has rendered him almost unviable. After all, what club would want to take their chance on a footballer who has hardly played in nearly half a decade? With his contract due up in the summer, this sorry chapter in Niasse's career is finally nearing its end. Emmanuel Eboué. One footballer who has been very open about his struggles with mental health in recent years is Emmanuel Eboué. And while it would be wrong to assume these have purely been a result of his experience playing for Arsenal and Galatasaray, there is no doubt he came in for a lot of abuse during his playing days in England and Turkey. Not so much the victim of the actual institutions he played for, Eboué sadly suffered the most toxic elements of football fan culture. One of the stars of Arsenal's run to the 2006 Champions League final, the Ivorian right-back's stock quickly fell among the Gunners' fan base, so much so that 2 years later, he was booed off the field after being substituted in a league game against Wigan. Despite being one of the most popular players in the dressing room, Eboué's defensive inconsistencies had seen him become a figure of hate on the Emirates terraces, and reports on the Wigan match suggested he was a broken man. The experience drove him to tears, and he even informed manager Arsene Wenger that he no longer wanted to train. 3 years later at Galatasaray, he was met with more abuse, this time from rival Besiktas fans, who repeatedly pelted him with objects and allegedly threw racial insults at him, with match officials apparently doing little to stop the violence. It's fair to say the football world has not been kind to Eboué. Ronaldo. One of the most tragically mismanaged players in football history, Ronaldo's career threatened to reach the heights we've seen from his Portuguese namesake and Messi over the past 15 years. In 1996, at just 20 years old, he transferred to Barcelona, having already amassed 107 senior appearances and 98 goals for Cruzeiro and PSV, and took the Camp Nou by storm, scoring 47 goals in his first campaign and securing himself a world record move to Inter Milan. Ronaldo entered the 1998 World Cup as the tournament's most hotly anticipated player and lived up to the hype, scoring 4 and assisting 3 as Brazil reached the final. But just hours before the all-important game against France, he had a seizure, which one doctor has since said could have killed him. However, he declared himself fit to play, with his side going on to lose 3-0, and reports still claim to this day that Nike, his sponsor at the time, forced his inclusion. After that, Ronaldo's injury woes were endless. He missed nearly 2 years of football at Inter with a brutal knee ligament rupture, and he never truly recovered. While he remained a world-class striker, the totally unplayable speedster who changed the game in the 90s was never seen again. So those were our 10 players broken by their club, but what did you make of the list? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, why not click on screen right now, as I'm sure it's a great video. Thanks once again for watching, and see you later.